Hi, good morning. My name is Kevin Millington, and I'm president of the Empire State Aerosciences Museum here in Glenville, New York. Today is Saturday, June 18th, 2011, and I'm really happy to have a special guest, retired Air Force Colonel Tony Germann. Tony, welcome to the museum.
Thank you.
And for being our guest.
Great.
Tony is here as part of a day at the museum. It's our Viet Nam commemoration. We're highlighting the 12 aircraft we have in our air park that were in the Viet Nam War, and especially the plane that Tony flew, the F-105, which was recently completed by our restoration volunteers, and Tony's here to talk about his experiences flying the F-105. How did you get involved in aviation?
Well, I actually got involved in it when I was in college. I was at Florida State University, and I was in the ROTC program because that was a federal land grant school, and so ROTC was mandatory, and I stayed in it for all 4 years. And when I graduated, I had 3 days to get from Tallahassee, Texas, or Tallahassee, Florida, to Del Rio, Texas. So I started pilot training in Del Rio in 1964.
Was that Laughlin Air Force Base?
Laughlin Air Force Base.
That's right, good. And tell us about your training in the Air Force. How long was flying training?
Well, flying training is normally right around a year. For me, it took a little longer. I had an accident playing football in the service, and I had my training broken up and then recommenced it, and finally got out in 1966.
Okay, so from 64 to 66, you were at Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas?
Del Rio, Texas.
Yeah, and primary training and advanced training?
Primary training there. Advanced training is when you got an aircraft assignment, and then you went to a specific base for that airplane.
What did you fly in your training career?
T-37s for the first half, and then T-38s for the second
Oh,
half.
that was a real hot rod, I know.
Great airplane.
Okay. So when you graduated from undergraduate pilot training, then you chose an operational plane?
Yes, I went. I actually initially went into KC-135s and was stationed up at Plattsburgh, New York.
When did you begin training on the F-105?
In early 1967.
Okay. I recall that the Viet Nam War, America's involvement really started in 1965.
Yes, exactly.
So by 1967, it was really a massive influx of troops into Southeast Asia, Vietnam, and Thailand. And this, Tony, I did bring the model of the plane you flew. Okay, this is a two-seat F-105G, similar to the one that you're going to dedicate with us. But tell us about the F-105.
Well, the F-105, at least to every pilot that's ever flew it, is the Cadillac of all fighter airplanes. When I say fighter airplanes, I'm using that term a little loosely because the F-105 was designed to be a low-level supersonic nuclear delivery vehicle. And it actually has a bomb bay where you see the centerline 650-gallon tank there. That's bolted right over the doors to the bomb bay. And they converted the bomb bay into a fuel cell to give us additional range. And the F-105, when it was originally built, was designed to be, I think its top speed limit was 2.5 Mach.
Oh boy, that was I know from history, again, as you said, it was very powerful. It was, in fact, was the largest, most powerful single-engine plane ever manufactured.
Yes, yes it was, and the fastest.
How many missions did you complete, did you undertake on F-105s?
Very similar to what they did during World War II, when the longevity for B-17 pilots, or most bomber pilots, was not very good. And they allowed them, I think, 25 missions. If they completed, they sent them home. And for us, it was 100 missions. If you flew 100 missions over North Vietnam and survived, they sent you home. So my first tour, I finished in 1968, and I finished my 100 missions. and I got sent home back to Air Training Command.
Okay. I remember, Tony, from history, I was a teenager then. In 1967, just from history and, recalling that the missions you flew were some of the deadliest, flying into the heaviest anti-aircraft fire. And with the very limited rules of engagement that were imposed on you from Washington, I recall that it was improbable for a pilot to complete a tour in F-105s. Is that accurate?
Well, like I said earlier, when I first went over, it was only 1 out of 4 pilots that were completing 100 missions. Now, that doesn't mean they were all killed. Some of them were POWs, and they also had a ruling at that time, if you got shot down and you ejected out into enemy territory, that you automatically got sent home.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, not everybody died, but we did lose a lot of F-105s.
Oh, sure. And you completed 2 tours on F-105s?
Yes, I completed my first tour in the F-105D, the single-seat strike airplane, and then they were calling for help in 1972 for what they called Linebacker 2, which was the big B-52 bombing program that they had, and they needed Wild Weasel pilots, which Wild Weasels at the time were the F-105.
This is the
F-105G Wild Weasel, the two-seater.
Had the anti-radiation missiles.
Yeah.
And your job was, what was the job of the Wild Weasel?
The job of the Wild Weasel, our motto was first in, last out. We would go in with our anti-radiation missiles. I see you've got a Standard Arm on here and a Shrike.
Mm-hmm.
The Standard Arm was a big advantage, but
that was the AGM-78?
The AGM-78. The mission was to go in
That would be this one right here.
before the attack airplanes come, or the bombers, and we would go in and we would try to get the SAM radar, surface-to-air missile radar systems, to come up online with their radars. And if they did, these were radar homing missiles, so we could launch a missile towards that radar beam, and it would lock onto that beam, and it would go right back down to where the emitter was for that beam. The Shrike was a much shorter range. And
the Shrike is the AGM-45?
The small one, yes.
Okay, the first anti-radiation missile?
Yeah, and the Shrike had limited range, and it didn't have any memory in it. So if they came up on our radars and we fired a Shrike at them, they would go shut their radars down, and then our missile would just go ballistic and not have a good opportunity to hit them. But it did accomplish the fact that you knocked their radar down, they shut it down. The AGM-78, or the Standard Arm, we could fire from a range of over 60 miles, and it had a memory. So once it fired and caught a radar emitter, it would put that into its memory, and even though they shut down, it would still go down to the missile site. And we had another little thing we used to do, was when we'd get a launch signal, we'd get it on our raw gear and would look out, and you could see, because a SAM missile is about the size of a telephone pole.
These are the S-8, Soviet-built S-82 surface-to-air missile?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. And it could go Mach 4, so it was pretty fast, 4 times the speed of sound.
Much time to react, huh?
So what we had, if you ever notice on flight suits, they always have a pencil pocket on the sleeve. Mm-hmm. And we used to keep a grease pencil in there. And what you do is you'd visually acquire the missile being fired, and you'd put a little grease spot on the canopy, right on the nose of the missile. And then you've got to continue to cross-check, because there might be another missile coming up from this direction, or a MiG jumping you from that direction.
Oh, so you got it.
So you couldn't focus in on just one.
Very stressful mission.
Yeah. So you kind of cross-check, looking around for other airplanes, other missiles, and you keep including this dot that you put on your windshield in your cross-check. And if that missile stays right on that dot, that means that plane's coming at you, or that missile is, and eventually that becomes your primary concern, your primary threat. And now you forget about everything else and you start planning evasive maneuvers against that missile.
Tell us about your most memorable mission.
My most memorable mission. I was up in the D model, up over North Vietnam, and I had commenced my bomb run, and they were firing up at me pretty heavy, and I took a hit right on the center line tank where the the 750 pound bombs were.
Which would have been right here on this,
Yes.
this is a fuel tank, but
Instead
your
of a
bombs
fuel
would have been right
tank,
here.
750
Okay.
pounders right there. And I took a hit right there, and it knocked off the bomb rack and all the bombs.
God.
And
Didn't detonate the bombs, fortunately.
no, but in my film that I have with me to show you, it does show one of the bombs just floundering in the air,
gosh.
smoking.
Huh?
And they put a hole in the bottom of my plane, right where that fuel tank is I told you about,
Mhm.
about maybe 4 feet in diameter. And I was losing fuel very rapidly through damaged lines. And so I headed home, and we had the airborne tankers all the time, and they used to listen to our combat tactical frequency.
This is, again, would have been,
So we're on our way back, and I'm getting ready to eject because I was losing fuel. I could see the gauge going down, and I had put all my maps, stuck them in my flight suit, and I was getting ready to escape and evade once I punched out. And I'm just flying along waiting for the first chug-a-lug of the engine, and I know I'm getting out of it then. And lo and behold, I hear one of the tankers comes up on my tactical frequency because they were monitoring. And he comes up and says, my call sign was Hatchet. He comes up and he says, Hatchet, this is Purple Anchor, which was meant which anchor he was in orbiting. And he said, this is Purple Anchor 14902. And he said, I'm 12 o'clock and I'm starting my 180. So I'm coming back this way and he's coming out here, and he starts his 180-degree turn, and geez, I rolled out right underneath him. He hooks on, refuels, starts refueling me, and when he hit his pumps, which are high pressure pumps, it further damaged my fuel lines. So, but there was enough residual fuel that it kept my engine running.
oh, okay.
Well, they have the capability of locking you on manually, which means you can't just disconnect without
So it kind
them.
of towed you home.
He towed me all the way
Oh
home,
my God.
brought me back to Karat, about a 2.5-hour flight, hooked onto a tanker, brought me down about 50 feet off the runway. He disengaged and flew off to Utapao. I landed and flamed out right on the runway.
Oh my God, that was an amazing mission, Tony. That was a
fabulous
difficult mission, I would say.
mission. Most exciting.
Utapao was another air base used by the United States Air Force in Thailand. They
Yes.
have a heavy lift there.
Strategic air
Yes,
bombers and
yes.
tankers.
That was a heck of a story.
Yeah, we contacted the crew from the 135.
Yeah, we probably brought him a
And
drink.
we brought them,
huh?
we brought them over to Karat for a weekend. We treated them to a whole
Ah.
weekend. So they
What
had
a
a great
story.
time. Yeah, that was a good story.